We've already determined, Bob, that you know Santa exists and that reindeers fly. We know this. And the way that you're dressed is wonderful because today the show is dropping. It is Christmas. You're going to be with us and 50 Tastes of Great for this final week of 2025. Tell me, if the little woman is not around, what did you get her for Christmas?
It's coming. It's coming. Mahjong set.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I remember Mahjong.
Yeah,
Will she
yeah.
be totally surprised?
Uh, Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you didn't
yeah.
lay any hints,
No,
did
no,
you?
no, no, no.
Okay. And do you expect anything special coming from
I
her?
do
I don't know
not.
if can you speak freely now?
Yeah, sure. I really haven't expected anything special since I was
What would you like?
six. I really don't need anything. Don't need
Well,
anything.
it's not about need, Bob.
Uh,
It's about desire. It's about
uh,
wanting. It's about play.
yeah, I would like the East Room of the White House restored to its glory of 2 weeks ago.
Okay. If you could occupy that small area space of real
Yeah,
estate, you could probably make some changes here in this world, couldn't
that's
you?
right. Oh man, yeah. Like one thing after another.
Oh boy.
Hmm.
Oh boy. I mean, that's a dreadful occupation for sure.
Yeah.
Now, Bob, I know you grew up in New England, and
Hmm.
since it is Christmas and, you guys are going to be sitting down for a family get together and all that,
Hmm.
who will be doing the cooking for this?
My sister Gail is a wonderful cook.
Yeah.
She really it's a and her principal elf at the holidays is my wife Lucy. I mean, she pitches in both at Thanksgiving and well, she runs Thanksgiving and Gail's the assist, and then it flips, and then I mix up the Bloody Marys, and Scott stokes the fire, and the kids watch movies.
Okay. What will be on the table for your Christmas feast and this last week
It'll
of the
be,
year?
it'll, Gail does a sort of well, the last couple of years, I think she's been doing a beef Wellington.
Oh
So that's
my, a
been
little
really,
fancy.
yeah. And we do turkey at Thanksgiving. We're very traditional, and my brother Kevin, when we do the turkey, we always have boiled onions with it. That's
Okay.
everything else is very usual, but we're very old school with the boiled onions.
Oh, tell me about it. Is it just plain boiled onions? Are they the mini onions, or what exactly do you do?
Well, yeah, that again would be Lucy could answer that better than I could, but they're
Well, let's
creamy.
get her on.
They're
No, just kidding.
creamy. They're creamy. I know that,
They're creamy,
and
so
they're
they're not
very
really
good.
just they're not boiled
Yeah,
in
they're
water then if they're
boiled. Yeah,
creamy.
they're boiled first, and then there's a sauce that's mixed in with them and everything. It's great.
Oh,
It's
nice. I
I'm
like
sh-
that.
yeah, it's very good. I'm sure it's something you got to work off the next week, but
It's totally worth it. I mean,
it's
this is the
excellent.
holidays. If now's not the time, it never will be.
You can't worry about it till the week after.
I'd like you to have Lucy email me the recipe for the boiled onions slash creamy onions, so I can share that with anyone who wants them.
I will. I will. I
And how about
definitely will.
yourself? Do you ever get up to the kitchen and do your thing?
Yeah, well, I not no. You mean like order pizza? I mean, I existed somehow years and years in between my mom's cooking and doing better with a family and being able to enjoy the food here. But really now I pretty much stick to a lot of salads and we and add the chicken into the salad or add just about anything into the salad, and it's great. But it's very. I don't mind. You know, these days, like going back to the well on a, almost daily basis, and eating similar things day after day. It's great, and I like the Greek yogurt afterwards with walnuts mixed in and some Manuka honey. I spent a year on a posting down in Australia. Did get over to New Zealand for a bit, and as I mentioned, I interviewed Sir Edmund Hillary on the Big Island at his home in Auckland. and he was a beekeeper. And he told me about all the, the native honeys and so forth. But the Manuka honey out of New Zealand was not a thing back then. I had never heard the word until
Wow.
a couple of years ago when it became this, nutty craze. And I do like it.
Yeah, it's the only food product I can think of that does not spoil.
Ah, is that right? Oh,
Yeah.
great,
I mean,
great.
as long as it's capped,
That's good to
sealed.
know. Yeah, yeah, they're sealed, and I've got two jars downstairs and one going up here.
That sounds good.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what have you eaten today then, Bob?
Let's see. I had well, just I went swimming. I usually have a power drink and then go do a morning swim, and then over at the Boys and Girls Club, got back and Cheerios, fresh fruit in them, and walnuts and some milk and low fat and Manuka honey.
Sounds good. Sounds like
Yeah,
you're
it's
rocking
great.
and rolling. You have plenty
Yeah,
of energy. Everyone can tell by this
that's
beautiful
right.
smile you have on your face.
Oh, I don't know. It's if it gets you through the holidays, it takes a good deal of the honey.
You grew up in New England.
I
Are you
did.
familiar with all the amazing food that's up in that area, that neck of the woods?
Yeah, well, it's funny because we joke all the time. We're from my wife grew up in we grew up in this town around 30 miles outside of Boston, and it when we were growing up, it was we had a local Chinese restaurant, quote unquote, the Hong and Kong. And, it's amazing because then we both went away to college. The food didn't get appreciably better. Then we both ended up landing independent of one another in New York City. And I was like, I had pizza in Chelmsford, but I had never had pizza. I had never had, you realize in 2 weeks of eating in New York City that you've never had real Chinese, you've never had Chinese food.
Right. Where have I been?
You've never
Yeah.
had any of this stuff, and you're learning these things like what's a niçoise salad, and oh my God, and we went to a Mexican restaurant, quote unquote, but we had never had, what was available there. We had never had Indian food. We had never had all of this stuff. And so, we've been in the New York access now for, oh my gosh, 40 plus years. And it's been great. And when we were living in Manhattan, as you know, I mean, it was really great.
When people first go to New York, it's almost like they're having a I've died kind of moment and like this is heaven because not only is there, a million languages being spoken and wonderful art and
Yeah.
architecture and all of that, but there's this food. I've died and gone to heaven. You get to try things for the
Yeah.
first time you never even knew existed.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? And then every now and again, there'll be something like would just Lucy and I would have a shared yen for some of the stuff that you were talking about in New England, and would go over to this little joint in a village. We were both living in Greenwich Village, called the Waverly Inn, and it was back in the day, it was old and it was really kind of funky. And would have the Indian pudding for dessert, and would
Oh,
have the all the stuff, and these old waiters and waitresses and everything else. And then we were up here in Westchester. We had moved out of the city, and the Waverly, had seen better days. And sure enough, it's somebody else who was in publishing at the time in the 80s, who was a kid, had fallen in love with the Waverly Inn for all the same reasons. He was from Canada, and that was Graydon Carter of Vanity Fair. And he bought the place and basically kept it as it was, except, boom, did the renovation, upgraded the cuisine, but kept the staple items that he
mhm.
used to love. And the Indian pudding's still there,
Wow, my dad grew up in the Sharon, Lowell, Lawrence areas.
That's where we grew up.
Oh, okay.
We grew up outside of Lowell.
And so he used to make, a special treat for the family, and Indian pudding was quite often what it was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like Indian pudding with ice cream, and then my parents were both Lowellians. They
Oh,
grew up there, and they were native to Lowell. And then they moved after World War II when they married. Dad came back from the war. They moved out to the suburb of Chelmsford, which is right next door. I mean, East Chelmsford became part of Lowell when the city split off from the town and formed itself and became industrial with the factories using the Big Fall and the Merrimack River for all of its power. They moved out to Chelmsford, and we grew up in Chelmsford
wow.
after the war.
Now, speaking of Lowell, we have to go into the fact, going way, way back, your great-grandfather who lived in Lowell delivered Jack Kerouac,
Great great grandfather. Let me
great-great-grandfather.
get that right.
Okay,
No, my great grandfather.
it
Yeah,
was your
you're right. You're
great-grandfather,
right.
according to what I read.
He
But
did.
could you tell everybody a little bit about, remind them if they don't know who Jack Kerouac was, and then your
Well,
great-grandfather's connection to him, and then all of the things that are related to that?
yeah. Well, Kerouac was the Kerouacs. They were the Quebecois who came down from Canada. They ended up coming in through Nashua, New Hampshire. And then Leo Kerouac ended up finding work in Lowell, and that was Jack's dad. And they didn't have any money to speak of. Leo had this job and that job, and a printing press and stuff, but he was all over the place. And they were, it's fair to say, hand to mouth in the earliest 20s. And so there's my great grandfather whose name was Rochette. They were also, my mom's family was Quebecois, originally. They had come down through Maine, ended up in Lowell. And Dr. Rochette was legendarily the doctor for the French Canadian community in Lowell. And he was particularly proficient delivering babies. The legend was that he delivered 10,000 Quebecois kids in Lowell
Wow.
in his career. But in any event, when Mrs. Kerouac, ma mère, as Jack's legion of fans of his novels would know, she went into labor in the family flat over in Centralville. The call went out to Dr. Rochette. So he got he walked across the river there on the bridge and delivered the baby Kerouac. It's funny in that Dr. Rochette was later imagined by Jack he wrote 5 novels that are called the Lowell novels among Kerouac cognoscenti. On the Road is not classified as a Lowell novel
Mhm.
because it doesn't factor into his imaginings really, and as much as it does in Maggie Cassidy and particularly The Town and the City and Visions of Gerard. And so, in any event, he was brought back. Dr. Rochette was as Dr. Simpson when Jack in the novel Dr. Sachs, Jack in his crazy way imagined, claims that he remembers his own birth. And it's a great
Wow.
scene. It's totally wacky, and it's Dr. Sachs is. I mean, for people who think that the beat writing and On the Road and so forth was so, it was very much. It was very, very modern to postmodern, and very avant-garde for novels that were being issued by big houses like Viking and after in the post-war generations and so forth. It was new. There's no question about it. But On the Road and Dharma Bums and Jack's better known stuff like that is staid compared to Dr. Sachs, which is there's history knows that Jack was let's say unwell when he was doing Dr. Sachs. I mean, he was taking many too many Quaaludes and other drugs
Oh boy.
and stuff at the
I
time.
miss those days.
He was, yeah, I mean, he was notoriously, and I mean, he died young and he drank himself to death. But and that's tragic. But yeah, my mom in particular, more than my dad. My dad was over in the Highland section. My mom was in the Acre, and she grew up. She knew Jack. Knew they were 2 years apart in their birth, and Dad was 2 years older than Jack, and they really never met, but. They grew up with all of the people who were in all of Jack's books, including dear friend of our families was Jack's one of Jack's best friends, Louis Eno, and he was a colleague of my mother's. He was a lawyer in town, but he was a colleague of my mother's at the Jeanne d'Arc Credit Union. I do not know this, but there's every possibility that the Kerouacs kept their dough, what they had of it, on a pass card over at the Jeanne d'Arc Credit Union, because that was the French community credit union in town. And I've been writing about all this for my sort of own amusement, but to get it, sort of memoiring the past few years. And it's been
You know, I know
fun.
I know this is a bit inside baseball for many people who are watching right now, but Jack Kerouac wrote On the Road. Do you think that people perceived him as a gruff creature
Yeah.
or a space cadet?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly, you look at the country today, you find a divide. There's no question in the 1950s that, and this was true in Lowell too, particularly true in Lowell because they knew him. You know,
Right.
half of the people, the kids in particular, thought this was the best thing they'd ever read. They were like, "Oh my God, it's so liberated. It's out there. It's wild. It's how I want. It's the vibrancy that I want. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece of writing." He and Ginsberg, Howell, that's not poetry. They're going like, who are these people? And they were like, it was like being scared of the Rolling Stones. I mean,
Right.
later, it's they weren't speaking the same language. They thought it was a bad influence. They didn't really understand any kind of salient difference between On the Road and Brando in the Wild One.
Uh-huh.
It was all similarly dangerous and ripping at the fabric of the country. I mean, so, the idea that there's a divide in America today, well, yes, but it's nothing new under the sun. I mean, there was a divide when we were pushing the Native Americans west, I mean, that's a divide. It's never been pretty. Um, but the beats were certainly a flashpoint for, they were an impetus to take sides. And, it's funny. Two guys came out of the 50s, two novelists who are interesting to me just because Eastern Massachusetts plays such a role in both their lives. Jack Kerouac, John Updike.
Uh-huh.
Um, I actually got to know Updike a little bit later, and it just was work that sort of brought us, and that's the only basis for the relationship, and it was a slight relationship. But I was talking to him once, and he asked me where I was from and so forth, and I said I was from Chelmsford up near Lowell, and I knew he was in Beverly Farms, so he would know where. And the minute he said, Kerouac. And I thought, boy, Updike was such a stylist. He never wrote anything but a beautiful sentence. And
Mhm.
I figured, uh-oh, Updike goes Jack Kerouac. I thought, here he goes. He's going to unload on him. Quite the contrary. He said he really was onto something with the spontaneity, with the spontaneous prose. And he said, quite often, I've wished I could do that, but he didn't see sentences that way.
Right.
They came to him a different way. Um, but he also said too, and he said this elsewhere, I've subsequently learned this isn't exclusive to me at all. But he said that he wrote Rabbit Run as a direct answer to On the Road. He was so taken by what had happened with On the Road that he had just his prior novel was Of the Farm, and then his first novel, which is was the Poorhouse Fare. His short stories were already judged as brilliant. Um, but Rabbit Run was his, when he started the Rabbit saga that became Rabbit is Rich, Rabbit Redux, all the rest.
I'm interested in knowing why the city of Lowell was so hostile to him, and when did that finally change? Why do you think it changed?
Well, part of it was Kerouac drank too much, and they knew him as a drunk. His best friends, his defenders, the Louis Enos and company, they always stood by him. He was a he was what you'd call a good kid. I mean, Father Spike at his church, Father Morissette, I mean, Jack was his kid. I mean, he loved them, and he never ever forsook them. But you know, there was there was just too much difficulty among the others. Part of it is Leo too, his dad, who was, he made his share of enemies in town. Even and that just, that accrues to the son, it accrues to the
Right.
whole family.
My favorite Beat Generation author personality was Richard Brautigan. Do you remember him?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And
Yep.
do you think it would be fair to say that the Beat Generation gave birth to the hippie generation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a direct line. There's no question. I mean, you can say that all of it started up on the west side in the neighborhood up near Columbia. Jack wrote on the road mostly at the place that his mother and father had taken out in Queens. Um, Also wrote some of it in the village. Also wrote some of it on bar napkins all over town at the, kettle of fish and so forth. And then it spread out, and that became the Beats, and the Beats definitely became the hippies. I mean, just ask ask Bob Weir,
Yeah, right.
what the Grateful Dead was all about in their earliest days. I mean, every one of them, their Bible was, and they all came differently. They came even from different kinds of music. I mean, Weird was folky, but Jerry was bluegrass, and it was Jerry's band. But and then Kreutzmann was jazz and so forth. But they were all on the road.
Oh, yeah.
They were all Kerouac.
Right. Before we get to Time Magazine, how many books overall have you written?
Of my own, a half dozen probably. And actually, we were talking about the Lowell stuff. I'll just show you one other here that's of the
Yeah.
season. This one was A Child's Christmas in New England, and this is all the stuff about the Lowell years
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. Yeah, there are even. I'm wondering if we have pictures here. Most of my books that I do that are illustrated, I've always worked with this illustrator, Glenn Wolfe, who used to draw for the New York Times, and he's just a beautiful, talented fellow. He's moved out to Michigan. I met him in the village. He moved out to Traverse City, Michigan. He was the head of the art department at Northern Michigan University. Also plays stand-up bass. He's great, and we've been together. He's my illustrated books. I did one on the Red Sox. They're not illustrated books per se. They're not like art books with a few words. They're usually like Flight of the Reindeer. Has 20,000 words in it. And the Red Sox book is a book where Glenn did line drawings and so forth. And then there's Child's Christmas in New England, which is basically about growing up outside of Lowell. And then a couple of others. But that when I was at Life Books, we were a small shop, and the title was the editor of Life Books, but I'd edit some of them and write most of them because it was
Right.
it was a small shop.
How did your time at Sports Illustrated, time and life shape you differently as the writer you became?
Well, rigor certainly, writing is it's a weird profession to get into, as you know. In that it's subjectively judged, not objectively. And so when you're working for a company like at Time Inc., You know, it's like anything with a writer. You know, some people are going to like your stuff more than others, and but you get used. The things you have to get used to are hitting deadlines, doing the assignment, um, and always. The difference between writing for magazines and writing the books is nobody has prepaid for a book. You can write whatever you want, and if you can get somebody to publish it, then people will buy it if they want to. The magazine, your responsibility is to your reader when you're a writer because they are expecting Time magazine and they know what to expect in terms of journalism from a Time magazine journalist. Um, you know, it can have opinion, it can have attitude, but it has to be factual, it has to be accurate, it has to be there are standards. Um, Certainly, that's part of the debate these days. Like,
Right.
where have the standards gone? At certain magazines, they maintain the standards are still there. And at an awful lot of others, the standards are gone because it doesn't seem to be what the choir wants as much as just somebody, in the echo chamber, not telling them what's true necessarily,
Hmm.
but telling them what they already think is true. Um,
Now, I'm guessing because you just made mention of the Red Sox in a
yeah,
passing few words, that you are a Red Sox fan. And so I just want to let you know we can still be friends.
yep.
But
Well, actually, since it is the day, I wasn't necessarily going to go there, but we have the Red Sox Santa hat. Everything they they ended up making everything you can make. Um, after 2004, there were all sorts of souvenirs that year, and
they love the merch.
we got a bunch of. I can tell you, Matthew, that the Christmas after they won it in '04, and winning it in that kind of fashion with the 7 games over the Yankees after having lost in seven in '03,
Ouch.
and I went to all 14 of those games.
Oh, well.
But every single Christmas card that Lucy and I got here in Westchester County from back home in New England, let's say 40 Christmas cards, all of them had a photograph of the kids in Red Sox garb,
Oh, wow.
them in Red Sox garb, them at Fenway last year. I mean, the pictures were nothing but Red Sox. And it was crazy. Not one from New England came down that wasn't Red Sox oriented.
Are you still a diehard?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, Roman Anthony's going to be P within 5 years.
Yeah, you guys are also
And we're going.
beefing up now during the off season, it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like it. We're going. Well, the thing about this team, if Roman Anthony, I mean, what is, I mean, hopefully he stays healthy. I mean, rookie year he gets hurt. We're young. I mean, the Sox haven't been young in a few years, and
Yeah, right.
now we're young. So we'll see. We'll
And
see what
they
that
got rid of the
means.
speed bump, in Rafi, which is good for the team overall.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. And at the time, it was very sad. I mean, I hate, things are always sad. I mean, it was tragic losing Nomar, but look
Oh,
what,
right.
that led.
Baseball's it's a tough game. It's a tough sport. It's a tough life because things are happening. There are no
Yeah,
goodbye parties. It's like it's over from one day to the
yeah,
next sometimes. So
yeah.
that's brutal. Now, you have to tell me about the how you were able to cover drugs in the NFL, the point shaving at Boston College, the Pete Rose gambling scandal.
Well, since we're talking about back home, they were all one of my beats was investigations at Sports Illustrated, particularly at Sports Illustrated. But at Time, I'd work on a couple too. The way I one of the reasons I segued to Time was because I did the piece at Time. I was on a loaner from Sports Illustrated, no, from Life to Time, to do their cover story on the Salt Lake Olympic scandal,
Uh-huh.
because it just seemed like it was, the editors there all know one another, and they're going like, this. this guy's done that kind of thing. And so they, if you could fill in and then they get to know you and then maybe you segue over. But at Sports Illustrated, it was one of my beats. And yeah, I mean, the cocaine and the drugs and the steroids, back when we were investigating steroids, oh, get this. This seems so quaint now, but we were investigating, student athletes in the NCAA who weren't going to class. Can you imagine? I mean, these days, but we were also crusaders on the scorecard section way back in the 80s that these kids should be paid. We
Wow.
were, and they thought that was terrible for Sports Illustrated to be saying that kind of thing. But look, I mean, the colleges have been exploiting these kids for so long and making so much money off their back. And in America, and the NFL and Major League Baseball wouldn't touch them because they were in collusion, because they
Hmm.
had a minor league system that was prepaid. They didn't have to pay for it. They were being delivered stars. They agreed not to draft these kids until they were a certain age or a certain class. That's clearly illegal in America. That's clearly restraint of trade. Because, look, I mean, if you're going to be a doctor, if you're going to be a lawyer, you have clients that you're responsible to. So you should have to get a degree. You
Hmm.
should have to know what you're doing because you're responsible to others. But if you want to be a writer or you're not going to do any harm to anybody. You just don't know how to do it yet. But you can take a shot when you're 12 years old. Nobody's going to stop you.
Right.
Why are we stopping football players?
Well, but now it's all these years later, it seems like college football has gone to hell because the kids can go from school to school, never hitting any classrooms along the way and become multimillionaires. It seems to have taken the incentive of being able to get to the pros. And of course, the coaches have no dedication or devotion to their teams. And they also bounce around a lot. It just seems like things are
I
really out of control.
Well, I don't think that I guess they're out of control. I think what they are is in a period of transition. If I were to make a bet, because I would have bet that where we're at now had happened 5 years ago, and it didn't. So I would have lost that bet. Um, but I don't bet on sports, so that's a different
Right.
question. But tell the kids not to.
But we should bring that into the
The
conversation because
yeah.
gambling has entered into sports and
Oh,
seems to have soured it in many, many ways.
well, gambling's always soured it, but there were efforts made to not become a nation of just gambling. And now with the internet and the rapid fire and everything else, I mean, this is not going to go away. I mean,
Right.
this is just going to get worse and worse and worse with AI and everything else. And sure, if a guy's, a third, if he's at the end of his career and can make an extra buck by dealing with the criminals, sure, and he'll take it. And I think that's going to get worse and worse. My prediction on college sports, um, and yeah, it sounds stupid, but I think in 5 to 10 years, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, all of the big college football teams will not be playing anybody who's called a student athlete. They shouldn't be called that today, but they will have a paid football team that represents the university. They'll still put, I mean, we already know that the fans don't care. They'll still fill the big house at
Right.
Michigan. They just like to scream and they like to tailgate and they like to bet and on their phones from the stands.
I remember the days
But
I'd go to Aqueduct Racetrack with my father, and they didn't even have phone booths because they
yeah,
were fearful about people making gambling calls to
right,
their bookies, et cetera, et cetera. And now it's like it's everywhere.
yeah, yeah. And I think these kids, who the 18 to they'll have contracts just like a minor league baseball player has with the Yankees or with the Red Sox, and they'll be employed by Penn State. They'll be guaranteed 4 years, Penn State will have to offer that contract to keep them away from USC. And, they'll only jump when their contract's up or if they get traded. I mean, it'll be these, and there'll be a super conference. No one understands this better than my friend Ivan Maisel, who's covered college football for, since I knew him at Sports Illustrated in the 80s. And he's now a dean of college. I mean, we hate the fact that we're so old now that we're deans of stuff. But Ivan is a dean of college football writers, and he's wonderful and brilliant, and he's clear-eyed, and he knows, and he thinks, one outcome could be a super conference where you have, 15 teams that are, that where everything's on the up and up. And there's nothing wrong with the up and up.
Right.
If it's hypocrisy that they're students, then don't call them students and don't make them be students. They're already not making them be students now. Where's the, it's a charade, charade.
So would they allow these so-called student athletes to be able to stay beyond the typical 4-year period of time you would be
That's a
going
good
to a school?
question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's going to be, if there even is an NCAA anymore.
Right.
Because look, I mean, Brett Kavanaugh has as much as said to the NCAA, yeah, you've lost all this first round of things. And Brett Kavanaugh's a sports fan. I think the rest of the Supreme Court defers to his opinion on these things because I don't think Samuel Alito knows, what's going on with, he doesn't want to be bothered with sports. But Brett Kavanaugh is a sports fan. He understands it, and he's told basically he writes the decisions, and he's let them know that yes, you're losing now, and you're going to keep losing because it's restraint of trade, and you either got to clean your own house and figure out the new solutions, or you're going to keep losing in this court, buddy. And what that'll lead to, I don't know. I think if I would not place a bet on the future of the NCAA. I mean,
Well, I think another part of the issue would be that only the rich schools will have teams because what's going to happen to the thousands of schools that don't have benefactors?
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you take the obvious one that everybody always goes to, the Ivy League, and then there are two other leagues in the Northeast that emulate the Ivies in principle, NESCAC and the Colonial League, with variations. There'll be club sports, and their coaches will still be on. They'll actually be saving money on their coaches because I think their coaches will be volunteers, kind of like they are. I mean, the Ivy Leagues, take a sport like rugby. That's a club sport throughout the Ivy Leagues, but they play on a national level. Brown and Dartmouth are two of the best rugby teams in America, men and women. Dartmouth is, I think, a 2-year consecutive women's national champion, but they're club sports. Now, when I was in college, the coaches of rugby were strictly volunteer. I assume they're paid now because these things, I see rugby on ESPN. Once there's a TV contract, there's a lot of money changing hands.
Right.
And if there's money to be made, then some of the people who are making the product good are going to start asking for and deserve some of the money. And so I presume these rugby coaches are employed now. I don't think rugby players are paid. Um, but I mean, back when we were there in the 80s, I mean, when I was a kid at I mean, it was so clear that the NCAA, the Olympic movement, all of this amateurism was BS, And I mean, it was an interesting time to be on the investigations beat. But I'll tell you, this story from back home, maybe the funniest one, wasn't funny for a moment, but was I was working on Scorecard, My editor was Jerry Kirschenbaum, and I was his reporter on the scorecard section at the time. And scorecard are those shorter items up front, but I was reading it. We always used to get the newspapers delivered to our cubicles for free in the morning, and I was reading the New York Times or something, and this industrialist was killed, shot, gangland style, on a golf course in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then, it was the Sports Illustrated work week was Thursday through Monday. So this was a Thursday morning, and I'm reading this, and I'd never heard of this guy. His name was Roger Wheeler. And I went down to Jerry and I said, I don't know, is there something here just because it's on a golf course? He got shot in broad daylight in Tulsa at his golf course. He had just left the 18th green and a mob hit or something, I don't know, and on a golf course. Is that a scorecard item or is that just not for us? And he said, well, why don't you look into it a little bit more, see if he was a big golfer or something. Maybe he was club champion and we can make something out of it, not a small item. So I looked into it that morning. I went down a few hours later and I said to Jerry, well, I've been looking at this and it turns out that the story's not in Tulsa. The story's in Boston. That's what I thought at the time. But the story actually was in Florida and Boston, not in Tulsa at all. Roger Wheeler just happened to be playing golf at Tulsa that day, but he was a greater Boston kid, grew up, and he was an industrialist, and he made a lot of money and became rich, and then he was lured into the highlight world as an investment. Now, highlight.
Hmm.
The old adage is if horses could talk, every bet'd be fixed. And so in highlight players can talk. So that's the reason it's never caught on in America. It's just not it's a betting sport, but you can fix it just by talking to the guy. You could get a player to throw a match just by offering him money. So it's
So
always
who's
been
offering the
dirty.
money? Give me an example in highlight because we've all heard that it's dirty from the beginning, but how
Well,
how does it work out
gang
between the people at the
mobster
top making the decisions and the two players?
mobsters, gangsters are
Uh-huh.
offering them the money and then they're getting their bets down the other way, knowing how it's going to go because the player will throw it
But
if he's being paid to throw it.
if there's only two players playing, then your chance to win as an investor better is 50-50, is it not?
Well, you go to the favorite and you get him to throw the match, just like a
Okay.
boxer. It's
Uh-huh.
just like a boxer throwing a match, or it's just like the Boston College point shaving scandal or the St. John's basketball thing. If you want to, I mean, why have basketball teams always been fixed more than football or baseball? Ask yourself the question. And the answer is there's smaller teams. You only have to get to one or two players
Uh-huh.
to impact the outcome. And baseball, you really have to pay a bunch of players to fix a game.
Yeah.
Now you can bet, since they're betting on what kind of pitch is going to be thrown in microseconds, that's why the individuals are coming back into play and getting busted.
Right.
But 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 historically, you'd fix a boxing match or you'd fix a highlight match. You'd fix an individual sport, or you could fix basketball by getting to and Boston College, the point shaving scandal that we all know about, which was actually tied to this highlight thing in a way, was they got to three guys on the team, Ernie Cobb and two others, and that was enough. That was enough, and so the highlight thing turned out to be okay. Well, Roger Wheeler had bought into Highlight as an investment, but then he found out it was dirty, and he wasn't dirty, so he was going to get out. And but what he the way he found out it was dirty was the fronton that he had invested in down in Florida, World Highlight, was infiltrated by the mob. Now, which mob? It had been infiltrated for years by the Boston mob run by Whitey Bulger. And so Wheeler wanted to get out. Whitey Bulger knew that if Wheeler put World Highlight up for sale, like so soon after having bought it.
Yeah.
They were never going to pass the state examinations again.
Uh,
They'd be
uh,
going like, what's going on here? You know, who's running this show? Well, Whitey Bulger and his gang were running it, but they didn't want that. That couldn't be known because everything was dirty down there. So Whitey Bulger had Roger Wheeler killed. Um, the guy in charge of World Highlight was a fellow named William Callahan. William Callahan was a lawyer in Boston. I believe he went to BC, grew up there, and he was always a kind of a mobster wannabe. You know, he was a lawyer in town and he was doing fine and a businessman, but he loved the idea. And so he became the Winter Hill Gang's, Whitey's gang. He became one of their advisors and lawyers, and ultimately Whitey put him in charge because he wore a nice suit and everything. Put him in charge of World Highlight. So I'm finding all this out, and I had an FBI source up in Boston. I've always wondered if it was Connolly. You know, my notes are long gone, but the guy who sent Whitey on the lam, the FBI guy who was his buddy, who was, can't remember who played him in Black Mass, might have been, I can't remember, Jesse Plemons or something. But in any event, I got this much information, and so I'm up in Boston by then, and I'm leaving all these messages for William Callahan, and then I go back to New York, and we write the piece, and we're closing it, and it became bigger than it had started. It wasn't just a scorecard item anymore, and we closed on Monday night. And I put it to bed, and I'm actually putting my notes away. We've cleared everything with the lawyers. We've buttoned it down, and my phone rings in my cubicle, and it's Callahan. And he said, you know, I heard you've been chasing me. And I said, well, I haven't been chasing you, but I've been trying to get in touch with you. We've been writing this story. We're closing it now. And we have said that you weren't reachable, but I'm happy to put in a no comment if you do not want to respond to this. What we're saying is, and I didn't read it to him, but I told him exactly what we were saying about his participation and everything about and the facts about World Highlight. Would you like to comment on any of that? And he goes, take it out. And I go, well, we're not going to take it out. We know what's true. We're not going to take it out. I was scared shitless, and
oh, you should have been.
I'm like, you know, and he goes, take it out. He goes, you know what can happen, and I'm like, well, we're not taking your name out. It's I'll put no comment, or Callahan was reached and wouldn't comment, and he said he basically threatened my life. And then we hung up, and I went down the editor's office, and the lawyers got down again, and we said, let's keep it in, blah, 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 and we did it. And a year later, Connolly sends Whitey on the lam, but they're closing in on Whitey. Oh, the thing that sent him on the lam, they're closing in. He's still in Boston, and clearly the FBI is getting close. They're following all the information they've got from these different things. And it really was the Roger Wheeler case that sent Whitey on the 2 years or whatever he had, or 10 years, I can't remember, of freedom, not freedom, but, being on the run. Callahan, meantime, is going up the ladder with the FBI as they're calling people before the grand jury. And he's clearly next. And a friend in Boston calls me up and says, hey, remember that guy a year ago that you were talking to about the highlight, Callahan? I'm like, yeah. And they said, well, it just ran in the paper. He was found bullet riddled in a trunk of a caddy in Miami International Airport. I'm
Wow.
like,
Was that because
holy
he knew too
shit.
much?
Yeah, it was because the FBI was going to call him, and Whitey didn't know what he was going to say.
Wow.
And it turned out it wasn't Steve Flemmi, it wasn't Rifleman Flemmi, and I think it was Mortadato, who was Flemmi's sort of associate in the Winter Hill Gang, who shot both Wheeler and Callahan. And later, he turned state's evidence, and I don't think he didn't, and he testified, and he ended up telling, confirming everything that we'd had on 60 Minutes. I don't know whatever happened to him, but
Being an investigative journalist nowadays is a dangerous sport, not unlike being a whistleblower. So,
it's crazy.
there's the honor and truth thing, but then there's also like, I want to preserve my existence thing.
It's well, it's I suppose it's our instinct that you're never happy to hear that somebody's been killed. But when
Right.
I heard Callahan was in the trunk of a caddy in Miami International, I didn't cry.
Right. Well, you would not be meeting with him, that's for
Like
sure.
this was a fellow that I could do without.
Wow. That's a pretty wild story. Now, Bob, I wanted to ask you if you were to have that mythical special dinner with anyone, dead or alive, give me three people you would like to sit down with and have dinner and shoot the shit with.
Hmm. I don't know. One of them would certainly be one of those guys from New England, but it would be hard to pick. I don't think Hawthorne would be very good company, but Emerson, Thoreau, or Melville, one of them would fill that slot just to see. I mean, wow, you know, and it was everything we grew up with, and then they've always been there. During the COVID, I reread Moby Dick, and I actually did. I mean, I'm like, I know everyone says they read Moby Dick, and that's the joke that nobody has read Moby Dick. But I actually like Moby Dick, and I got so much more out of it the second time through. Maybe it was the COVID that the sense of isolation and stuff that brought so much of the God stuff and everything to the fore. And then I don't know, mom or dad figure out what they've been doing, what is out there, and then to pick a living one, I really don't. Who looks like a good dinner companion? You'd be a better expert on this, Matthew, than I would be.
Well, I
But
could hang with you guys if you wanted.
yeah, sure, okay. I mean, if that's a convenient, I'd like to. Let's see.
I could even cater that affair, actually.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. I think, actually, it would have been, who would have been cool? And it just comes to mind because she just died. Jane Goodall,
Mm,
I mean, because, I don't know, see what those three have to say to one another. I
that
mean,
would be an
shows,
interesting get together.
and see if there's any points of commonality. But
Right.
nice people, I think. Emerson seemed like he was a nice guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thoreau could have been a little prickly, I guess.
So you mentioned COVID a minute ago. Just how much of a crazy time was that for you personally? And do you think that ranks up with where were you when Kennedy was shot and, that kind of stuff
I
and
think it's got
9/11?
I think it's gone to in memory, and that and the only reason I say that is kind of revisited it this year I got this Substack site,
Oh, and
and
it's great.
it's well, thank you. I mean, I'm just happy to, but I just do it for recreation. I don't do crossword puzzles or Wordle, and so it's my sort of kind of fooling around thing, and
I'm guessing you're a chess player, though.
but used to be. When Hurricane Sandy hit, my son and I took up chess again because we were all, we were doing it by candles and stuff. And he was getting into it. I think he'll go back to it. And he was just a boy at the time. That was so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
And I was recalling it. I used to play with my brother, and there was a chess club at Chelmsford Junior High School, and but I got this Substack thing, and then 5 years ago during the COVID, I mean, I was already old, and so I was told to isolate and stuff, and by Dr. Fauci, whom I trusted implicitly, and still think he's a good man. And he just journaled, basically with the kids in mind, our three children, so that this is an opportunity to just write stuff, and so that they can remember their parents a little better. And it became the Kerouac memoir project sort of sprung out of that,
Hmm.
and it just became this big long journal about where we live, where we're from, stuff like that. Fun stories, musings, some politics, so forth. So this year, it was 5 years on. I realized already I had forgotten what it was like during COVID, or kind
Yeah.
of forgotten. Or I was wondering, I hadn't forgotten it at all, but I was wondering if it was different than what I thought I was remembering, sort of in a Rashomon sense. And so I went back to it and I cut it, edited it, because parts of it are of no general interest. And I would bet parts of it that I put in are of no general interest. But I've been running it all year long in real time, emulating 5 years ago in the Substack site, which is called That Reminds Me of a Story.
Right.
And it just goes one story to another story to another story. And it was interesting to break it because it didn't have chapters or anything, but it was interesting to break it into posts to try to just, I didn't rewrite anything. I didn't write anything new. I didn't write anything new. I did determine where to lead each post and where to kick it, and just wrapping it up. It's the holidays now, and so we're running out of year,
Right.
and it's interesting to see where we were at that time, because of course it was the same president, and that was an election year. That was November 3rd of the COVID year.
Right.
2020 was the year that ultimately Biden beat Trump, but it was also the year of George Floyd.
Mm.
It was a year of so much stuff that kept booming as a sort of a cannon shot in the distance as the COVID was in the forefront,
Yeah. Yeah.
and climbing above the fold in the newspapers. And then, I mean, the Black Lives Matter took off after the George Floyd thing. And then it was a question of, people wanted to rally again. And then they're breaking up rallies in different places, saying you can't gather because of the COVID and all of these massive things intersecting. And people like me are being told to stay on your porch because there's a plague in the air,
Yeah.
and don't go there at your age. And it was weird. So it
It
was fun
remains to be that now.
yeah, yeah. And it was interesting too to see how there was such a sort of at what's happening now in the country this past year. If you look at it as a tumultuous year, and I don't think you can look at it any other way.
Right.
Echoes a lot of the tumult of that quiet year, with this
Hmm.
plague settling over everything and all of the tumult sort of suppressed. I don't know. It was weird, but it was both strange and interesting, and truth be told, kind of fun for me to revisit that
Right. Yeah. No,
five
I've
years
been
later.
following you on the Substack. I really enjoy those posts.
No, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, let's switch gears again
Yeah,
back to the food thing because here you are in your Christmas garb and so on.
yeah.
And having come from New England, you have to kind of give me your stance on the great clam chowder debate. Manhattan or New England clam chowder. Why is there even a debate on that? They're not the same.
There's no debate.
Right.
I mean, there shouldn't be a debate. And
Right.
I'm boiled live is the only way to have a lobster, and New England clam chowder's the only clam chowder, and Fenway Franks. You know what's interesting, Matthew? Since you bring up food in New England and everything else, I just thought of one thing that might be of interest to you as a food guy. I really do think so much of it in the heritage sense that you talk about is what you've gotten a taste for. My dad was a very quiet guy and everything, and he was one of those guys, one of those veterans of World War II who really didn't talk about the bad stuff at all. He'd tell us
Mm.
some funny stories, but and then subsequently you find out war is not funny. This he must have seen some real bad stuff. He went he was a sergeant, and he led a platoon from Normandy through to the Battle of the Bulge, and so they saw action there and too. But um, I used to watch Fenway, the games from Fenway. Kirk Gowdy was the announcer on Channel 4 when I was a kid on Saturdays, and my dad was quite often there and would be watching the Red Sox and stuff, and I'd get something to eat, out there. And, Mom used to make great squash pie, so I'd grab a piece of squash pie or something. Dad would take a piece of white bread and put ketchup on it, nothing else, fold it, and come out and eat that. I'm like, what is? He said, oh, that's my ketchup sandwich. And I said, there is no such thing as a ketchup sandwich. What is this? He had developed a taste for it during the war because the rations got so slim during the marches that they were eating ketchup sandwiches. And he liked it. He grew to like it. And it's not that he wanted to be reminded of the war, but that was a thing. And then the other thing was we'd go to Bates Farm in Carlisle, and it was a great ice cream stand in the summertime. And we'd all get cones. And Mom would get a cone or a frap, New England thing. And Dad would get a glass bottle of buttermilk and lean against the thing. Yeah, cows were there and everything, and it'd drink the buttermilk as we ate her. It's like later, when I was 13 or 14, and I was like, Dad, what's with the buttermilk? What it was they when the rations were such that they were getting no dairy during the war, and then when they hit the beach in Normandy, he wasn't on the first wave or the second. I think he was the third wave, but and started making their way inland. It was all, the paratroopers, all that stuff's done, and they could march on. All of the farmers in Normandy, farm to farm to farm, as they made their way, they were all so relieved and in love with Americans, the liberators. After all this time, their chickens, eggs, buttermilk that they hadn't had in 12 months, a year and a
Right.
half, whatever. And, ever since then, buttermilk.
Love comes in so many forms, doesn't it?
Yeah, crazy.
Now, you grew up, I'm sure, because I'm guessing you're a New England Catholic type, that
Yep.
your family must have observed the Friday night fish dinner.
Yeah.
Um, what did that meal look like for you guys? What were you eating? And tell me it's
Fish.
different than the all-you-can-eat clams and
No,
hojos.
no. Well, the thing I remember best about fish on Friday nights is remember, of course you do, Little League games, so you're on a Little League team, right? Down at the Chelmsford Center, we had,
Right.
now everybody had a Friday night game. The games would be backed up, all the fields would be in action and everything. And Coach Ennis was a really good guy. And after our night games or evening games, he would buy the team, and Dad was his assistant coach. And would go up to the shack and they'd buy everybody on the team a hot dog. And all the Catholic kids, we had to eat the fish stick sandwich on Friday nights, but they bothered to have, and they did not have fish stick sandwiches. The other evening games during the week, but on Fridays in New England, they had to have an equal number of fish stick sandwiches for the Catholics.
Right, right. So you were hoping for the hot dog, but you knew the fish was
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah, and then Saturday night was your classic thing where you had the Franks and beans and brown bread.
Yeah, I'm going to
That
take you back a few years now. Do you remember the Fluffernutter
Oh
sandwich?
yeah, yeah. I
Did you
didn't like it.
you didn't
I don't
like it?
know. No, not my. It wasn't my
Okay,
thing.
but did you know that the marshmallow spread on the Fluffernutter sandwich was invented in Somerville?
I did not.
A
And
little bit of trivia for you. You can win a
yeah,
couple bar bets now.
yeah. I mean, and yeah, that's right. I got to tell. Well, I'll tell that. I will tell that story at the Christmas table
There you
shortly.
go, while you're sitting
Shortly,
around the
because, well, I think my niece is living in Summer.
so
Gail's
yeah,
daughter, one of
there
Gail's
may be a
daughters is.
plaque or a museum. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are plaques and museums for lesser things.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Bob, I had a great time chatting with you. Is there anything that
You
I
do.
didn't ask you that I should have?
I think as the Substack site makes only too clear, I could go on and on, so you don't want that.
No, it's speaking to you has been a delicious experience. Now, do me a favor, Bob. Do an out of body thing here a live
Hmm.
promo for what we just experienced in this last hour and a half that I'll be able to put on the front side of this chat so people will see it when they first tune in to see us. Oh, you up to that?
Why, sure, I think so. And I'm pitching this to who? To your audience, or?
To anybody who passes by this show on any of the internet's social sites.
Well, I will say, Matthew, that I think we have, sort of covered the waterfront here. I mean, and it perhaps is the first conversation in the history of man to go from baseball and college sports to Whitey Bulger, but most importantly, Santa Claus.
That's right. Will you be dressing up and passing out gifties and having
M-
interesting people sit on your lap?
the request is in, and I do have a Santa suit. You know, the youngest of the kids is now 25. So I don't, it's getting a little old.
It would be an interesting
Won't it?
photograph for like a Merry Christmas kind of card that you can
Yeah,
send
it
out.
it could be a little creepy.
It could be. Well, on that note, Bob, I want you to say aloha to our audience and we'll go from there.
Aloha, and you're going to be the first stop, Hawaii, and then on to the. You're early on. Wait a second. What side of the date line are you guys on? You're on our side
Yeah, well, I'm on
of the
your
date line.
side.
Okay,
Don't
so
think I'm anywhere else.
you come
Uh-huh.
late. You come late because he really
Right.
starts with the date line. Santa starts with the date line and moves west. As the globe spins and
Right.
everything. He follows the
Well, I know I can always count
timeline.
on you to
Yeah,
call you to find out what happened so I'll know what
yeah.
my future is like.
No, Matthew, buy the book.
Where can people get the book?
I don't know. Amazon for sure. I mean,
Uh-huh.
all the certainly Flight of the Reindeer and Child's Christmas in New England and our Red Sox are all on Amazon. Yeah.
I have to ask you, going back to Flight of the Reindeer, what is it like when a book gets adapted for the screen and then someone wants to make a movie out of it? How much control or say does
I
the
had
writer have?
I had none. I had none. But a great story on that. I mean, I sold it, and they made a CBS TV movie out of it back when Sunday night CBS
Right.
TV movies were big deals. And Beau Bridges played Santa Claus, and the protagonist they turned him into a college professor, but essentially the fellow who goes on the quest to find out about all this stuff, the science and everything, which would have been me, was played by Richard Thomas. And the cool thing is, years and years and years and years later, I'm working at Life and I'm on the entertainment beat, and Beau Bridges is coming to Broadway in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. And he's so he's going to be on Broadway. So I got in touch with his PR people and I said, "Look, I'm paying for the tickets, but my kids, are just the right age to be enjoying this play, and it would be really cool afterwards if we could go backstage for a second and meet Bo. If he seems like a sweet guy, would Bo say hi? Because my kids would be thrilled to meet the guy that they see in the movie, who's Dad Santa. And Bo's a sweetheart, and blah blah blah. And so we're there, and we're in Bo's little dressing room, and he couldn't have been nicer. He's just as nice as you would imagine either one of the Bridges brothers to be, Jeff or Bo. They're just great. And my kids, meantime, are being very nice and polite to Mr. Bridges, who's, Dad Santa and all this. However, his co star in How to Succeed in Business, the one that plays the young man, is the Robert Morse role, basically, is Nick Jonas. And he is my kid's idol.
Oh, wow.
They're all looking at him. He's out on the stage talking to some other kids. And I said, and finally, and the kids are paying very little attention to Bo, and they keep glancing over and like, Bo, I hate to say this is embarrassing, but do you think they could meet Chowder. He says, "Oh, he's a great kid," and he spent 15 minutes. Oh, they still talk about it.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah,
A good story. So what is it? What's the business part of it like? Like you're the writer, don't you own the rights to that story? And how does it get
yeah.
purchased or taken?
Yeah, you get a check.
Oh, you get a check,
Yeah,
but then it's all there.
yeah. They buy they're basically paying for the video rights, and then we get another check because remember John Ritter?
Sure.
They did an audio book, and
Ah,
this was probably in the earlier days of that kind of. I mean, there were always people doing readings, but and John Ritter did the audio book.
oh, that's fantastic. So you love those residuals.
Well, there aren't many residuals anymore, but it was fun at the time. It was my looking back at it, it's interesting because it was my first book, and so when it was all happening, you didn't even realize that this doesn't happen all the time,
Right.
and it was kind of like, huh, you know, it just seemed no, like okay, cool, whatever. And now you go like, oh, that was kind of fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. Bob, have a merry, merry, merry Christmas, wonderful New
You
Year,
too.
and we'll definitely be keeping in touch. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All
All
right.
right, thank you, Matthew.
Thanks, Bob.
Bye now.
Bye bye.